Hello, and welcome to the American Veteran. I'm Dale Parish, your host, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Carl Fowler. He's filling in for Bud Mendenhall today. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Well, thank you very much, Dale. I'm a member of the Korean War Veterans Association, and we're looking for a few good members. We hold our meetings the second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. at the VFW Post 857. It's on the hill at the end of West Main Street. If you served in the military anywhere during the Korean War or in Korea, anytime after the war, you are eligible. So come on out and join the camaraderie and socialize with other veterans. Spouses and friends are welcome. Lunch is available after the meetings. As a group, we participate in parades, have memorial services at the Korean War Memorial on O'Day Road, have Thanksgiving and picnics with the Korean community, plus many more activities such as our Tell America program, where we visit schools and tell of our experiences. For more information, email us americanveteran@frontier.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Our guests today are two Marines. One of them is Don Shearer, served in Vietnam, and Hank Fernhaber, served in Korea. This program will be talking to Don about his experiences in Vietnam. When did you join the Marines, Don?
Dale, I enlisted December of 1963, and it was a big decision on my part. I'd spent about a year out of high school and really hadn't made my mind which direction I wanted to go, and the Marine Corps kind of caught my eye because it was an organization that strived to do and be the best. It was also an organization that was dedicated to serve God, country, and the Corps. So it was definitely an organization I felt I wanted to be a part of. So I enlisted in December and decided rather than stay in cold weather, I wanted to go to San Diego. So I went to San Diego for boot camp and spent a lot of warm time there during the winter, which everybody at home was still in the snow, so I was appreciating that. My first assignment was to 1st Engineers. 1st Division was on the West Coast, and at that time the Marine Corps only had 3 divisions, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The 2nd was on the East Coast, Camp Lejeune, and the Mediterranean, and the 3rd was in the Pacific, in Okinawa, Japan, and Philippines. So I was able to stay at Camp Pendleton, which was my first assignment, 1st Engineers. And soon after I'd been there about 3 or 4 months, the word came out that they were forming a new company for a specialized group of people for shore party landings. And that was going to be located on the ocean front at Camp Del Mar there at Oceanside in California. So I was transferred to Oceanside at Shore Party Battalion. And in Shore Party, there was like 4 different units that were operative there. The Seabees were there, which today would be the SEALs. And Recon, which would be in the same as Army's Green Berets, and Amtracs. And they were all affiliated with actual land to shore operations. And so we routinely worked on that and strived to do as best we could to make a quick and safe landing. In the spring of '64, the word came that there was need of somebody to go to the Pacific. So there were several men in our outfit that volunteered to go to the Pacific. We didn't know for sure where we was going to end up, but the word was we was going to end up Vietnam. But we was hoping that we might get sidetracked at least for a while in some of the other areas, which we did, but not for very long. We boarded a USNS ship, which was a ship that was commissioned by the military. It was a civilian ship, and took that trip to Hawaii. Spent some time in Hawaii loading ships, and each stop we picked up additional ships. At that time we were using the old World War II LSTs, and there was one LSD in the group, which is a new form of the LST. And from there, we took military ships to Okinawa. We spent about a month in Okinawa, boarding and getting all the equipment, which was quite a undertaking. Never thought about it too much until we actually did it, where you're trying to take everything with you and you have no idea what you have when you get there, because you just throw it in a box, everything's piled on pallets and everything is just loaded, and then when you get there you try to decide where everything's at. So it was quite a chore, but we got the job done. Then from there in Okinawa, we we had 3 LSTs and 1 LSD and ended up at Yokohama and spent a little bit of time there. I think it was just for the troops to have something to do before they landed in Da Nang. From there, we went to Da Nang, and the reason we were there, early in '64 that year, I don't really remember, there was a Gulf Tonkin affair that happened where the North Vietnamese fired upon 2 of our battleships in the Gulf of Tonkin. And at that time, President Johnson sent 3,500 Marines in to protect the Da Nang Air Base. The air base was a facility that the French had built during their occupation there, and the United States was afraid that the North Vietnamese were going to take control of the air base, which would have been a very poor strategic failure for the United States. So those 3,500 Marines were already there, and our job was to go in and prepare for the division, because the commandant decided that they would move the 3rd Division to Vietnam and establish another division, which they established the 4th Division. The 2nd Division was moved, and the 4th Division took its place on the East Coast. So as we moved, our job was to make an establishment at Da Nang to clear and make sure that all the boundaries were safe for the division to come in, because they had decided that Da Nang was going to be the command post for our commanding general, General Westmoreland. So on the west side of Da Nang, we had to secure that area, which was no small undertaking, because at that time everything was rice paddies. There was no roads. You couldn't drive on anything. And so they had to make roads and try to establish a perimeter. And the west side of Da Nang was the actual combat area between Laos, which had the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which the North Vietnamese used to cargo and to get supplies to and that's where they would aggressively come toward Da Nang. So for the first couple, 2-3 months we were there, that's all we did was get ready for the division. And so Charlie Company, which is the company I was in, we established that perimeter. And so when we was first there, mainly, rather than even know regardless of what our MRS was, everybody took a military or took a type of position to where you were what we called grunts. They're infantry, and because it was a day-to-day struggle, and we really didn't know what we were doing. I mean, that was the fact. We were still using M14s, which were not made for jungle warfare. It wasn't until later on, and sometime between 65 and 73, that they brought the M16 in. Our clothing, I didn't know what a tropic was. You see people wearing tropics, camouflage. Never seen a camouflage uniform when I was there. The boots were considered to be jungle warfare boots. They had canvas tops so they would breathe and let your feet dry out. It didn't work. I know I've heard several Korean veterans talk about how in Korea it was a real job to try to keep your feet from freezing, and in Vietnam their job was to keep your feet from rotting, because you had what they called jungle rot, and your feet was just during monsoon season, your feet would just stay wet day to day and day and day. I mean, your clothes would never dry out. And so we improvised a lot of different things. One of the things we did was we had 2 issues of boots, and we made a wooden box and put a light bulb in the top of it, and then we'd set 1 pair of boots under that each night as when we went to bed, and the next morning they would be pretty dry. So we was always at least starting out with something dry. And the ground over there was the type of soil was called laterite, and it was the type of soil that when it was dry it was really hard, but boy, when it was wet it was just mush. I mean, you would sink into your waist if you stepped into it. So it was a real job. A lot of times just walking down between rice paddies, because if you got off of it just a little ways, you was sunk, you know. Well, we had been there about not very long, a couple weeks. And as we were establishing a secure area for the general's bunker, of course, we were affected by insects like everybody else. There was malaria involved, and of course that comes with the mosquitoes. And so there was a lot of spraying being done by the military, and we didn't know. I mean, we weren't involved with that, so we didn't have no idea what that was. And but what we found out later on is what they were spraying was to defoliate the trees so that the enemy couldn't hide anywhere in and around this perimeter, and it was the Agent Orange. And so the early occupants of that area were just getting flooded with Agent Orange.
You was.
And we was. And of course we didn't know that. And we just thought they were spraying mosquitoes and bugs for malaria and stuff. And maybe they were, you know, don't know, but we do know they were spraying Agent Orange on us. And we were seeing malaria cases. I know, talk about heat. I've never seen a place in my life that was so hot. It was, and maybe it's hot in Afghanistan, and I don't doubt that, but I also know that in Vietnam, of course that's the old Indochina, and that area, when the sun would come up, it's almost as hot as it's going to be all day. And it was not uncommon. We'd have 110, 115 degrees. We would wake up in the morning in our canvas cots, and it'd be like a half an inch of water in the bottom of your cot where you sweat all night, you know. Yeah. And of course we slept under a mosquito netting and everything. But that was a luxury, because when we first got there, we stayed in foxholes. There was no tents. You know, we were there to set a perimeter, and we dug foxholes, and that's where we stayed. We didn't have any water to drink. They didn't know how to treat it. They overchlorined it. You was always in the restroom or on the john all the time. And it was several months before they got that corrected. And so there was a lot of issues we dealt with that I know that those in Korea and World War II didn't. And one of the things was there was no uniform front. There was no uniforms. You didn't know who your enemy was, you know. The enemy's objective was to kill one person a day. It wasn't to go out and annihilate a battalion or a company or something, you know. And they did a lot of this at night, because during the day they'd work in the rice paddies, and then during the night they would sneak into camps, set bear traps. They had what they called punji stakes, which they would dig pits, and these bamboo stakes, they would sharpen them and put poison on them, and you'd fall in these pits, you know, and scrape. If you just scraped your leg and you got it, you know, a lot of people ended up losing their legs because of it, or a limb if they got poisoned, you know.
Sure.
One of the things that I really appreciated was the fact that I was able to be there during the beginning of the war, because I was really, truly able to see what the war really was. Uh, later on, I thought, man, they really got it easy. The guys were sleeping in strongbacks, which is, it was a wood frame with a wood floor, and then had a tent thrown over the top of it. And that's what they stayed in, you know. And I thought, what luxury, you know. They actually had showers. They could take showers twice a day. They had 3 generators that would run, 2 run continually, and 1 under service. And there was always enough power and water. I never seen it fail. But I was able to see at the beginning when it wasn't that way, because there was a lot of things. Just for example, when we first got there, you had to be outside the perimeter in what you consider to be the war zone at least 21 days out of 30 to get combat pay.
Yeah.
Well, when the division got there, the generals and the majors and the colonels all decided that was no good, because they weren't going anywhere. So they decided anybody that was in Vietnam got combat pay. So it changed pretty quick.
What was combat pay in Vietnam?
You know, I don't really remember. I can't remember, but
Made you
it was
rich,
about
right?
double or triple what we were normally making.
Made you rich.
No, it didn't make us rich.
I know.
But that was really what money was not an issue over there anyway. All he was trying to do is stay alive.
You didn't have any place to spend it anyways,
No.
to speak of.
A lot of people played cards and stuff, and that's the way they got rid of their money. Some guys got rich, some guys didn't,
Yeah.
Do you know if this Agent Orange has affected you any?
Well, in January of '66, I became affected. What the doctors at Med Battalion said that I had they didn't know what it was. They call it dermographia, which at that point in time it's a description of what your body looks like. But I had welts, large lesions on my body. You couldn't touch my body without it welding up. And I know first several doctors I went to see at Med Battalion would take a tongue depressor and turn me around, take my shirt off, and they would write their name on my back with a tongue depressor, and within about 2 minutes I'd have a welt about a half an inch high, about a half inch wide. And they took pictures of that, put the date on it and all that stuff. And so after several weeks of them trying to check to see whether there was some other cause that they could treat it for, they found that it was anything that they had any idea what was going on. Because at that time, nobody recognized Agent Orange.
Right.
They thought it was basically safe, I guess. So the colonel I seen at Head Med Battalion in Da Nang said, "You don't belong here." He said, "You can't function, you got to get out." So they put me on a C-130 and flew me to the Philippines, and there we got on transport for the U.S. and I was med evacuated into the United States to Great Lakes Hospital. They treated me, they tested me, they did everything they could, not really knowing what they were trying to treat for about 3 months, and gave up on me and said, "We don't know. We're going to send you to Bethesda." So they sent me to the Bethesda Naval Hospital, and I spent a couple months out there. And after about 5 months, it had been so long since I had exposure that my body was starting to readjust, on the outside anyway, to where they felt I could go back to active duty. And so they did send me to headquarters Marine Corps in Arlington, Virginia for a while. And the brigadier general that talked to me said he thought that I should go back to Vietnam, and I said, "Well, I don't know. My enlistment's only a year and a half left in my enlistment." And he said, "Well, maybe we'll send you to schools." So they sent me to Camp Lejeune as an instructor to instruct the recruits out of boot camp for the ones that were going to Vietnam, how to prepare for what they were going to face. And that's where I ended. My wife and I ended my enlistment at Camp Lejeune in 1967.
Okay, so you became a drill instructor.
Well, they didn't
DI.
call us that, but we were instructing, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Was there any interaction with the civilians in Vietnam?
Did I what, Dale?
Was there any interaction between the troops and the civilians?
Oh, well, the South Vietnamese, of course, they had been getting quite a bit of assistance from the United States for years. Most people don't know that the Vietnam Indochina assistance started back during Truman's in 1945.
Right.
And President Eisenhower gave quite a bit of assistance. And then President Kennedy, it wasn't until President Johnson took office that it really started to step up. But up until the time we got there, it was just strictly an advisory type situation. So there was very little that we knew about what we were facing, because there had not been any combat on our side, or so we knew at that time. So the ARVNs had all kinds of, I couldn't believe the equipment they had.
ARVNs?
The South Vietnamese, the South Vietnamese Army. They were being given supplies, they had better equipment than we did. And we were still using old World War II equipment. The Marine Corps always saw it got shorted, because being a branch of the Navy, I think some of your major armed forces get better, the new equipment, and we kind of got the hand down. So I think a lot of the equipment we were looking at would have been some of the newer equipment that the military was getting in the other branches of the service. And But we worked with the RVs, but not really directly. It was kind of a thing that they were just, I always felt like they were just along for the ride. They were letting the United States do the worst of it, and they were just kind of enjoying all the benefits of it.
Yeah.
There were so many things that was misconception, I thought, during the Vietnam War that a lot of people didn't understand. I know they classified it, they call it the dirty little war. Well, most people don't understand that the Vietnam War was one of the longest wars that the United States was involved in. There was 2.5 million military people that participated in it, and there was over 58,000 that paid the ultimate price. It wasn't the kind of war that most veterans were pleased to come back and say they participated in, because so many people in the United States felt that we were nothing but baby killers. Because of what the press showed, there was a lot of misconceptions, but they didn't know some of the things that were taking place over there. We had one of the first instances I remember about a month after we were there. As I said before, it was awful hot, and of course, if you got a chance to drink something cold, you took a real advantage of it. And there was a young Vietnamese girl that used to come through our compound, and we were really naive. We allowed these people to just kind of come through, you know. And she rode her bicycle, and she had a little satchel on the back, had little bottles of Coke, if you remember the small Coke bottles.
Sure.
And she had ice in there, and they were nice and cold, and boy, everybody just loved it. They'd run out to the bicycle and drink Coke, you know, and buy Cokes from her. And she did this for about 2 weeks on a regular basis, every day. Everybody got real used to that. One day, she came in and did the same thing, only this time, she had a pair of black silk clothes, which is a lot what they wore, and she had a grenade strapped to the inside of her clothing, and she simply reached inside, pulled the pin on the grenade, and killed about 12 Marines who were there to buy this Coke. Terrorism, and what we think of today about where people use their own bodies as a bomb, is nothing new.
Yeah.
I mean, they used every way